Male Homo sapien, but certain object is currently traveling downwards. Male Homo sapien, every Homo sapien in the planet. I must inform you all that the Homo sapien you are currently observing with your very eyes is nicknamed Ziggas. Male Homo sapien. I have recently entered the fast food establishment, which its name is McDonald's, and the objects that I have yet to disclose seem to represent a fairly cheap economic value. So anyways, back to the main point that I am trying to dictate. I entered this establishment and ordered 2 sandwiches consisting of 1 or more cooked patties of ground meat. I then consumed both sandwiches and processed them in my digestive system within approximately 2 seconds. I must, without hesitation, admit in a boastful manner that I, at one point in my past, should have participated in a national championship, or more generally any sort of competition that involves the consumption of sandwiches consisting of 1 or more cooked patties of ground meat. However, that anecdote that I just vocalized in order to provide the background of the story that I have yet to dictate is not the main situation, obviously. It is that I entered the establishment and decided to childishly tinker around in the small portable enclosure in which a baby or small child is expected to play safely. You should be very well aware that I am enormously fond of, I must apologize for my recent stuttering. Anyways, back to the point I am trying to make. I am an enormous and fairly obese child. I am also around the age of 20 years old, and I just am very fond of the solid or hollow spheres and ovoids which are usually kicked, thrown, or hit in a physical activity. I very much admire and adore solid or hollow spheres and ovoids which are usually kicked, thrown, or hit in a physical activity. Solid or hollow spheres and ovoids which are usually kicked, thrown, or hit in a physical activity are very amusing and have a high significance on this planet. I also contain my own solid or hollow spheres and ovoids which are usually kicked, thrown, or hit in a physical activity. Well, not exactly the same exact type of solid or hollow spheres and ovoids. If you have not noticed my recent satire, then I must swiftly inform you that you should be well aware what kind of solid or hollow spheres and ovoids I am currently discussing, given the context that I own these balls. So I must then question the establishment and directly the reason for why I am not allowed to childishly tinker around with the solid or hollow spheres and ovoids which are usually kicked, thrown, or hit in a physical activity. So anyways, I decide to enter the small portable enclosure in which a baby or small child is expected to play safely. You should also be aware that I am also propelling solid or hollow spheres and ovoids with force through the air by movement of my arms and hands. I am also allowing solid or hollow spheres and ovoids fall due to the force of the Earth's gravity directly upon my face. I am propelling solid or hollow spheres and ovoids with force through the air by movement of my arms and hands directly towards other Homo sapiens in the same establishment I am in for no apparent reason. I simply could not express my admiration enough, so I must repeat that I very much admire and adore solid or hollow spheres and ovoids. I am still in that same place childishly tinkering around with solid or hollow spheres and ovoids until all of a sudden I swiftly observe an enormous and obese female Homo sapien that seemed to be approaching me with suspicion that I might have somehow become a disturbance in the community of the establishment. So then that female Homo sapien has the audacity to dare enter the boundaries of my safe space, and due to my swift observances of her appearance, I must reveal that she appeared to look as if she was mentally challenged. I am now going to imitate the first few sentences of what she vocalized in that very moment in our confrontation, so that you may get an impression, although slightly over-exaggerated but for the purposes of comedic effect, of how her voice actually sounded in terms of pitch, velocity, and tone. Here it goes.
I must alertly request you to pay solid attention towards me of what I'm about to vocalize. I must alertly request you to pay solid attention towards me of what I'm about to vocalize. I must alertly request you to pay solid attention. Sir, it has come to my attention with your recent behavior in that small portable enclosure in which a baby or small child is expected to play safely. I must regrettably inform you that you individually are not allowed to be in this certain area childishly tinkering around with the solid or hollow spheres and ovoids.
I must vigorously inquire you to state the reason for why I am not allowed to play in the small portable enclosure in which a baby or small child is expected to play safely.
Well, the reason for that disallowance I have recently taken into effect is that you are currently already past the age one like myself would expect.
I must, with a bit of surprise that I am feeling at the moment, repeat what you have just vocalized. I am currently past the age of what one like yourself would expect. I have to oppose part of that assumption you have had the audacity to dare say, for which my own currency was under the age of what one like most Homo sapiens would expect. My own coins in my pocket that are the result of a surplus in exchange of currency I have utilized to order a previous purchase of an undisclosed item was also under the age of what most Homo sapiens would expect. However, now at this current moment in time where I am just childishly tinkering around with some solid or hollow spheres and ovoids, that finally some individual has finally had the audacity to dare challenge this conspiracy by scolding at me for my behavior while existing at an age over what most Homo sapiens would expect. So it is with utmost importance that I dare say with my own audacity that this is a presumably illegal act of discrimination in which it would be ageist due to the recent information I had just been given towards the rules of the establishment and the comparison of those expectations with my own age. I must somehow, without any serious thought of consideration, attempt to contact African-American Muslim minister and human rights activist Malcolm Little, also known as Malcolm X, in order to provide a more credible example of evidence that would then aid the justification of my assumptions about this sort of discrimination against me. I must somehow take this action of, oh darn, it has come to my attention with subtle reminiscence towards the current life status of Malcolm Little that his heart as well as other major vital organs of his body are currently not functioning and have not functioned for a significant amount of time, which would classify the male Homo sapien as non-living or perhaps dead. However, I am not too disappointed with this recent misfortunate discovery, for which I know the most appropriate Homo sapien that will perform the same acts I wish to happen. I will assure you that I will most considerably instead contact the current leader of the new Black Panther Party, Quanah Ralph, also known as Quanalix, who resides in Houston, Texas, which would definitely serve better than my previous muttering about Malcolm X, considering I also currently reside in that same city. He is without a doubt the next popular person. I must without hesitation repeat that I will assure you that I will contact Quanalix, because this sort of action and assumption that is taking place in this moment should be classified as some sort of discrimination. I am fond of childishly tinkering around in the darn small portable enclosure in which a baby or small child is expected to play safely in the fast food establishment, whose name is McDonald's. And now all of a sudden a random group of Homo sapiens who remain undisclosed have the audacity to start vocalizing the fact that I am over the age of what most Homo sapiens would expect. I am over the age of what most Homo sapiens would expect. Then I vocalize, madam, in what exact location, what seems to be the current situation that troubles you enough to cause you to bother me with your grotesque ramblings? Sure, I am over the age of what most Homo sapiens would expect. Of course, one like yourself would occupy his or her cerebrum to produce thought concerning whether the age of most Homo sapiens who enter the small portable enclosure in which a baby or small child is expected to play safely are even so slightly higher than what most Homo sapiens would expect. However, I myself do not worry or overthink my own age, and do not hold in regard much or at all for the regulations of the establishment you wish to enforce upon me, so I must therefore inquire you as to what other Homo sapien in this planet would even care to follow your regulations. I am fond of childishly tinkering around inside the boundaries of the darn small portable enclosure in which a baby or small child is expected to play safely. Then the same female Homo sapien has the audacity to dare continue forth with our conversation that I have regretted encountering and vocalize.
Alright, I must open up more truthfully, as I cannot seem to predict any fortune for me at this point. The true reason for why you are not allowed to childishly tinker around in the small portable enclosure in which a baby or small child is expected to play safely in is because, due to your biological structure and the way it appears to be due to my observations, you appear to be too high in both volume and in weight to be able to fall peacefully in line with the regulations of this establishment. I must further assume that your exact weight in American pounds would be, what, 200 pounds?
I decide to vocalize with the tone of surprising I am currently feeling at the moment. 200 American pounds. Female canine animal, I must inquire you on whether or not you have taken time out of your morning routine to observe and catch sight of any sort of object with a reflective surface that you should at least own in your residence that would allow you to observe an almost exact replica of yourself, because I have to assume with my observations of your physical appearance that you are approximately 350 American pounds. You are approximately around 360 pounds, which is the equivalent of a 3-digit number that follows after the word Xbox, which together spells out the official name for a once popular video gaming console. Female canine animal. That approximation that I have just assumed is the volume size equivalent of yours Xbox 360. I must also inform you that the owners and manufacturers of the same console, which is named as a company Microsoft, have named the console with that exact name with regard of your physical weight, female canine animal. And yet you have the audacity to dare make an assumption towards me about existing with a surplus of weight than what most Homo sapiens would expect. Female canine animal, that you are way too enormous in volume to be able to consume practically any object, edible or not. Promiscuous female homo, you are also too enormous in terms of mass and weight to be able to perform certain duties within the fast food establishment McDonald's in exchange for monthly currency in the form of a check for salaries and wages. I highly suggest that you should perhaps perform exercise on a fairly enormous device with an endless belt allowing you to walk and run in place, which you must also purchase if you have not already won yourself before you even attempt to apply for a paid minimum wage internship at this fast food establishment called McDonald's. I must inquire you with a major sense of skepticism if you are certain that you are currently performing certain duties at this establishment in return for some amount of exchange of currency in the form of a paycheck, or rather are you simply a random citizen in this town incognito for the purposes of attempting to carelessly acquire without any need for purchase every possible Whopper present in the establishment, which is a consumption order for a particularly popular sandwich containing one or more cooked patties of ground meat, you enormous and obese female canine animal. Actually, are these so-called Whoppers a consumption product of the fast food establishment Burger King or the other fast food establishment McDonald's? In all honesty, what Homo sapien in this planet would even care to answer this simple but unnecessary question? I am simply vocally giving you information, you enormous and mischievous female canine animal. I must regretfully admit that because of this confrontation that I must state yet again is a subtle, but nonetheless unfair legal act of discrimination, I no longer have a desire for the economic and consumptual traits of this establishment called McDonald's. And furthermore, why is it that I am not allowed to childishly tinker around in the huge small portable enclosure in which a baby or small child is expected to play safely in, but at the same occurrence of this misfortune somehow that grotesquely disfigured and unhandsome comic entertainer wearing traditional costume and exaggerated makeup that was present at the same time and place as I was is actually allowed, unlike myself, to childishly tinker around in that same huge small portable enclosure. Now, for starters, I am not describing the classic clown character and primary mascot of the McDonald's establishment, Ronald McDonald, for which I must clarify that I am actually describing popular deceased American singer, songwriter, record producer, dancer, actor, and philanthropist Michael Jackson. Oh, he is currently deceased. He is currently deceased. May you brutally perish to whatever dimension that is not of this current one I, along with the rest of the Homo sapiens, reside in. I am very weary, and I've had enough misfortune from this concept of discrimination you group of Homo sapiens seem to display within the community without detection. Administration of the fast food establishment McDonald's.
You are not allowed to childishly tinker around within the boundaries of the huge small portable enclosure in which a baby or small child is expected to play safely in.
Well, I myself do not care for your unfair regulations for which I can carelessly childishly tinker around within the boundaries of whatever darn object or concept I find a desire to childishly tinker around in. I must economically place upon you group of Homo sapiens a bet of an amount of American currency of $4 female canine animals. I must also offer suggestions about the best course of action towards every single one of you Homo sapiens, for which is to somehow manipulate the regulations of your establishment. I must offer suggestions about the best course of action towards every single one of you Homo sapiens, for which is to somehow manipulate the regulations of your establishment. Administration of the fast food establishment McDonald's.
Oh, you are not allowed to childishly tinker around within the boundaries of the small portable enclosure in which a baby or small child is expected to safely play in.
I highly admire and adore red solid or hollow spheres and ovoids, blue solid or hollow spheres and ovoids, orange solid or hollow spheres and ovoids. So therefore I find the desire to childishly tinker around with the solid or hollow spheres and ovoids that are within the boundaries of religious figure darn small portable enclosure in which a baby or small child is expected to safely play in. And yet again I must vigorously repeat myself once more that I will offer suggestions about the best course of action, which is to somehow manipulate the religious figure darn regulations in your establishment, administration of the fast food establishment McDonald's. Manipulate those same regulations which I am currently ranting about. And lastly, I must rant and inquire why. I mean, how in the place religiously regarded as a spiritual realm of evil, suffering, and perpetual fire beneath this planet, is it even possible for you group of Homo sapiens to be able to swallow such a darn ridiculous amount of liquid through your throats? I have to exclaimingly inquire as to why does a darn sweet carbonated beverage represent an economic value of $2.39, a singular and lonesome religious figure darn sweet carbonated beverage. I mean, this is such a ridiculous feat, a sweet carbonated beverage, and it is currently economically representing the value of $2.39. Seriously, I have to inquire with such curiosity as to what kind of sweet carbonated water does your staff in this establishment serve? A brief and usually light fall rain hail sleet or snow that is composed mostly of a yellow precious metal commonly used to craft such basis jewelry. I must now curse in the name of a place religiously regarded as a spiritual realm of evil, suffering, and perpetual fire beneath this planet. This sort of tomfoolery seems to metaphorically appear to be some feces of an uncastrated male bovine, and you are very well aware that I am capable of producing as well as manufacturing my own darn brand of sweet carbonated beverages. Am I correct? The formula for the sweet carbonated beverage I would produce would have to be made with 3 primary ingredients, which is water, a small amount of a sweet crystalline substance, and lastly some powder that is utilized to produce the fruit-like flavor that I desire and is utmost important as it aids me as the signature substance of my sweet carbonated beverage, female canine animal. So therefore I find it extremely unnecessary for whatever you are producing inside the boundaries of this establishment your staff would dare call your sweet carbonated beverage to economically represent $2.39, for it is such a ridiculous market tactic to even consider. Now I must conclude this vigorous but necessary rant about the unfair behavior and economic downfalls from this establishment I have misfortunately experienced because I am currently finished with my ramblings. Administration of the fast food establishment McDonald's. I am currently finished with my ramblings. I must now give you a hand signal that represents hatred towards the community your establishment has displayed upon me. You, as well as the rest of the community of your establishment, will one day feel and express a strong desire for and wanted to have happened to own my would-be successful sweet carbonated beverage business that I would have no regret in commencing in the near future. I am now currently leaving the current place that I am standing in and do not wish to return to this same exact place or this fast food establishment.